Hey guys. All right. So today I want to talk about developing our capacity for presence. All right. And we're really focused on this today because this is really, really important. So, quick context, personal peace process that we've been talking about endlessly in continuum, coming back into the present moment, checking what is wanted, and working skillfully with thoughts and feelings to navigate whatever's coming up as we try and do this, right? Because often we turn to what's wanted, parts of the brain come up, so you can't have that. So we got to deal skillfully with those thoughts and feelings. Coming back into the present moment. Now, the present moment. Everybody freaking talks about this, right? Everybody talks about it. But today I want to talk about it from a really practical point of view because I don't think I really understood this until recently. And I'm constantly learning. And I would plan to be constantly learning until I kick the bucket. My job, my goal is happy, healthy, happy, healthy, happy. I'll be dead. Like I want to be learning and expanding and growing. So I'm constantly doing that. And so that's part of why we are constantly growing together in continuum. So I experienced this, but I didn't know enough to describe it to others. And now I think I finally do. The capacity to be present in the moment is something you build. And you build it based on certain realistic things, okay? In fact, I'm going to do a little quickie crash course in what's happening in the brain. I've got some notes up here, so I'm going to pull them up. So you guys have been hearing people talk about mindfulness for a long time, right? Mindfulness, meditation, things like this. We have discovered, we being the whole community of people who study this, not me personally, but we have discovered that mindfulness is so powerful that even a person who is coming out of, say, the kind of trauma like being in war that leaves you having PTSD dreams and is extraordinarily difficult and painful for people, that kind of trauma can be directly affected so much it is greatly diminished by a simple 8-week group course in meditation. Like 8 weeks will do it. That's huge. People go into therapy for years, for decades. People kill themselves because of this. So mindfulness is super powerful. However, the power of those courses is limited by how much people practice. I actually taught one of them for a long time called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which is a spin-off from mindfulness-based stress reduction that was modified to specifically address depression, which has its own challenges. And I taught it for 7 years, and I saw the people who did the practices got the benefits, and the ones who didn't. And that's how it worked. And some people wrote to me years later and said, at the time I took the course with you, I couldn't do the work, but I created this great little workbook, so they had the exercises, and said years later I was able to implement it. 2 people wrote to me years later and said, finally I've been able to implement it, and thank you for offering this and giving me something I could take away. So I've seen the benefit of this for myself, and I have also seen my own reluctance to practice. It is so strong, and I want to honor that you're not reluctant to practice because you're a lazy jerk. You're reluctant because there are certain things that are really hard about it. So, that being said, I want to strengthen your capacity to be present, which is where all our power lies. And I want to offer some tools here for understanding how to do that, okay? So, with this thing about mindfulness, I got my notes here. There are parts of the brain that do different things, and there are physiological changes in the brain as a result of meditation. So one part of the brain, I'm sure y'all have heard of it, is the amygdala. People talk about amygdala hijack. It's a thing where the fight or flight response generated from, and so you could, some people refer to it as the fear-based part of the brain or the reptilian-based part of the brain. There's a lot of ways people think about it. But basically, its job is to kick you into overdrive when you're in danger. Now, there's another part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is a part of the brain. I've got a very, very, very fancy brain diagram here. I bought this at Staples for $1 like 15 years ago. So the amygdala is the kind of bit in here, prefrontal cortex. Now this is very vague, as you can see. There's no differentiation in these parts, but this part of the brain is how we make decisions, how we measure whether or not something is in fact dangerous, okay? And then there's this really interesting part of the brain called the, where is it? It's called the medial prefrontal cortex. Did I get that right? Hold on. I want to make sure I say it right because I always mess this one up. Yes, the medial prefrontal cortex. And this part, medial, refers to being in the middle. And in fact, there are two parts of it. There's the ventro and the dorsomedial. So there are two parts of this piece of the brain. And the reason I'm telling you this is because the medial prefrontal cortex is sometimes referred to as the me part of the brain. It's the part that identifies you, that says, this is what I am. So the amygdala perceives danger, and the prefrontal cortex analyzes things, and the medial part talks about who you are. And so these two parts of the brain, the two parts of the medial, one part of it is all about who you are, and one is about who others who you don't identify with are. And what happens with meditation is, I'm going to read the notes here because I did not make this up, and I'll share the article. First, the strong, tightly held connection between the me center, which is the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, and the bodily sensation fear centers. So this strong, tightly held connection begins to break down. And what this means is when something happens that generates fear, you begin to be less likely to make it about yourself. Like, all kinds of things happen that aren't really about us at all, and in fact aren't dangers to us. Like, we see something, we're like, oh, okay, no, it's okay, it's nothing to do with me. So the part of you that so connects danger to you, the part of the brain just starts to break down. These connections diminish first. Second, again, looking at my notes because I want to quote these things, a heftier, healthier connection forms between the assessment center and the bodily sensation fear center parts. So a stronger connection forms between the part of you that can say, hold on, what's going on here? Was it really so bad? So we begin to have more capacity to not be quite so caught up in knee-jerk reactions to our conditioning. All right, that's really huge. So one other thing I just want to say here, because I was thinking, so literally people can look at people's brains on an fMRI before and after meditation practices, like 8-week programs or whatever, and see that before meditation. It says if you were to look at people's brains before they begin a meditation practice, you would likely see strong neural connections within the me center and between the me center and the bodily sensations fear centers, so that whenever you feel anxious, it feels like it's about you. In contrast, when you look at it later, you can see literally more tissue formed in these areas that begin to mediate it. Okay, so I'm just doing this little sales job. This is a real thing that happens. Now, how the hell do we get ourselves to do this meditation thing? And this is where I really want to support you in developing a practice that will work for you. Okay, all right, so all brain stuff aside, at an experiential level, what I mean by it is an experiential level, what we notice within ourselves, right? That's at an experiential level, what I notice within myself. As we do these practices, what happens is we begin to form a kind of little island inside ourselves that we can stand on. So, for example, recently I was saying I visited Copenhagen and Amsterdam, and in these towns there are a lot of cyclists, like a lot of cyclists. People bicycle everywhere, which means as a stranger, you're coming into a city where you already kind of don't know where you are, and you're crossing roads that, in addition to being looking out for cars, you got to look out for bicycles, and they move at very different speeds, and there's very many of them, and it's tricky. It's really tricky to navigate. And this is one thing that tourists do all the time, is they stand in the bike lane and just cause trouble. So you have to train yourself not to do this. So what I found on numerous occasions is, if I was crossing a road, right, I'm on the pavement, so I know I'm okay, right? And then there's the bike lane, I got to cross that. And then there's the car lane, and I got to cross that. And so I'm looking just to the right to see, to the right. And then I cross and I get to the middle, and there's a little raised pavement in the middle where I can stop and say, whew, okay, now I look to the left and I can navigate that. So what we're doing is we're kind of building this little raised section in the middle of the hubbub of life, where you can stop, regroup, let yourself take a breath from the piece you just accomplished, and then get ready for the next piece. So we are building this within the self. We're building this little island of rest. Okay, and this is at an experiential level. We are building that capacity. That's what it feels like okay, hold on, let me come back to myself, and we have an island to stand on. So this is the difference between crossing the road and there is no island in the middle, and you have to deal with all four directions at once, bikes and cars all at once, or there is an island in the middle and you just have to get to it and regroup. So we're building this island within ourselves, a place to stand and regroup. Does this make sense? This is what it feels like at an experiential level. All right. So am I really going to say all this? I think I'm going to say it, okay? If you want to skip to the end for the practices, feel free, but I prepared these notes and I think they might be helpful. This is part of a larger capacity, this is part of a larger practice of strengthening our capacity to perceive thoughts and feelings and experiences that we are having as what they are, thoughts and feelings and experiences we're having, rather than as who we are. This is a part of a larger process of strengthening that capacity. Like, I am able to say, woo, fear, without going, oh my God, I'm afraid, and totally identified and caught in it. All right, so we are strengthening this capacity with ourselves. This capacity to do that, to say, oh, I'm having thoughts that are making me anxious. Okay, got it. Take a breath. This capacity is fundamental to empowerment and happiness, because without this capacity to see these thoughts and feelings and not get caught in them, but stand as the observer of them, without this capacity, you are at the mercy of your conditioning. So your conditioning tells you, be fearful, and now you're fearful. And let's be clear, if you are at the mercy of your conditioning, meaning your conditioning gets to decide how you feel, then you are literally at the mercy of the biggest shit asshole you experienced in your childhood, because they're the ones who instilled this stuff. So we are freeing you from those childhood tormentors, whether it's other children, or whether it's your parents, or whether it's the school system, or whether it was just circumstances that left you feeling scared, whether you grew up in a war zone, So we are freeing you from the conditioning, imposed by these childhood tormentors. All right? It's very important. Sometimes I get a little adamant, but seriously, this is where our freedom comes from. All right. Hold on, look at my notes. So we're looking at this capacity to stop and recognize that this being that I am is having a thought and a feeling right now, but all thoughts and feelings come and go, while this being that I am can remain constant here. This is the building of the island. I am on an island. I'm standing on it saying, ooh, strong feelings. I can let them go. All right, again, this is in our personal peace process. This is what we're doing here. What we're doing is we're working skillfully with thoughts and feelings, but we are building the capacity to stand on the island so that we can do that. All right? All right. We want to be able to come back to this awareness, just like we can come back to an island in the middle of the road. So we need to build this awareness sufficiently that we can come back to it. Over time, what will happen is this awareness becomes more independent of thoughts and feelings. You begin to perceive this awareness as an ongoing, existing sense of self, regardless of what's going on. And so, even though life is happening, and life does happen, and even though you might have a very reasonable response by getting upset because life is happening, you're like, what? Even then, you do not quite lose this awareness of yourself, this island awareness of yourself as a being who has some autonomy over this process and can say, whoa, whoa, hold on, hold on. Maybe you got to take yourself out of the situation. You know, I'm not saying you calm down in the middle of all situations. I'm saying you develop this sense of, I am still in charge of myself a little bit and can be responsive. Okay? All right. So that's what we're talking about building here. Now we get to the nitty gritty, the practice part of it. I'm going to offer 4 practices. They build. Okay? And I would say if you really, really, really want to have the capacity to be responsive in your own life, to say, you know what? I am the boss of me. I choose how I respond to stuff. I choose whether I take this thing and let it be problematic, or I take this thing and let it be a challenge that I'm going to get support on and figure out how to do. Okay? If you want that, I would strongly suggest you start doing some of these practices literally every day, possibly multiple times a day. And I'll explain that a little bit more as we go. So the first process is the easiest one of all. And actually, if you go to the Staying Calm in Crisis course, I talk a lot about this in there. There's a whole lot of videos on it, so or 2 videos or something, but it's very well delineated, but I'll talk about it now and I'll talk about it again. It is 3 mindful breaths. 3 mindful breaths. 3 conscious breaths. Call it whatever you want. 3 deliberate breaths. 3 ins and outs of breath where you are saying, I am the boss of me and I am directing my focus. This takes about 20 seconds. So we're taking about 20 seconds of your life where you are in charge of your attention. Okay? So we are literally building the muscle of attention. Now, this is like lifting a small weight. So here, I've got my coffee cup as always. So if I hold my arm out to the side and I lift my coffee cup, there's not a lot of response from that muscle because, you know, this is not heavy. But if I do that over and over, I guarantee you, will start to see that muscle grow. It will grow. And then if you just do it another way, we can build the tricep, right? So we can know that even this lightweight coffee cup that I can hold in 2 fingers, no problem. If I do it enough, it will build that muscle. 3 mindful breaths is like that. And even more important, it immediately provides you that island. Like you start to develop that island right away because the island is the 3 mindful breaths for you. So you're going through your day and say you have been practicing the 3 mindful breaths, okay? So you have been practicing it, and then something happens and someone's a jerk and something goes down and you say, let me get out of here. And then you go and you practice your 3 mindful breaths. Because you have been practicing, they are already an island, and coming back to them is instantaneously re-regulating your nervous system because you practice them. The first time you do them, this is not the case because you have not built the neural pathways that associate these yet with calm. But if you will do them, you will find that they become all by themselves, even if you don't do anything else, a tool to help you come back to yourself and regroup and re-choose what you're going to do standing on that island, okay, in the middle of the road. 3 mindful breaths. Now, I'm going to offer a few ways to do the 3 mindful breaths. If your mind is particularly busy or caught up, or you're not used to meditation, or meditation is really hard for you, mindfulness is really hard for you, then here's what I suggest you do. I suggest you literally think these words as you breathe in. So my hand's going to represent the breathing, and I'm going to be saying what I'm thinking, because obviously I can't breathe in while I'm talking. So here's my hand. We're going to think these words. Okay. In, 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. In. 2, 3, 4. Pause as long as you want. Out. 2, 3, 4. If you speed up the breath, speed up the counting. So what you're doing is you're using these words to give your mind a job to do. So, sorry, I don't mean to talk like that, like I'm being a dick. But to give your mind a job to do so that it's not thinking about all the stuff it's trying to get you to think about. So you're giving your mind a job too. This is a very good practice, and I recommend it for the rest of your life. And if you want to take it one step further, you could just think in and let your mind be in silence, out. And that gives you an opportunity to give your mind a little job to do and sit in silence also. So this is maybe a little heavier lifting, okay? And then a third way that I would like to offer you is to feel the sensation of cool and warm in the nose as you breathe in and out. So if you just do it right now, just sniff, and you feel the air, and then blow out. So you can feel the sensation. So as you shift from an in breath to an out breath, the shift is from cool to warmer, usually. Maybe always, I don't know, but every time I've done it. So you literally just pay attention. You can close your eyes if you want, to the sensations. Now this gives your mind the chance to wander all over this. So if your mind gets very, very talky during this, then switch to one of the other two, okay? So there are 3 different tools that you can use depending on how you are. And if you're in a nice calm state, breathing and feeling it is pleasure. If you're in a really agitated state, you probably can't direct your mind to do that. Then you do the in 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4. And each time do at least 3 breaths, or maybe I would even say only 3 breaths, because what you're doing is you're training yourself to have this island available. Okay? All right, so that's the first thing. The first practice is 3 mindful breaths. Mindful simply means paying attention. Jon Kabat-Zinn defined it as paying attention in this very specific way, in the present, on purpose, and without judgment. So in the present, on purpose, without judgment, right here, I'm deciding what I'm going to look at, and I'm just looking at it. I'm not evaluating it. So in, out. Okay? So that's number 1. Number 2 is a larger practice that I taught in in the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy training. I did not make this up. This comes from the training. And it is called the 3-minute breathing space. And on my website, I will put the link. There's a page that explains it all. I'm going to do a teeny little explanation of why this is such a good practice, and then I'll leave you to learn it on the page because it's too complex for me to teach here. But what this does is it has 3 parts. And the first part is awareness, where you take note, you kind of take stock of what's going on with you. The second part is focusing or gathering, where you draw your attention into the breath. And the third part is expansion, where you take this sense of self and you open it up so you're beginning to perceive yourself in the world. It takes some practice to do this. And this, as part of the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy program, is so central that I think we teach it in week 2, and then every week from then on, for the rest of the program, you are doing a version of it at least 3 times a day, every single day. And it's called a 3-minute breathing space. When you're learning it, it takes about 5 minutes. When you get really good at it, you can do it in 3 minutes, or even a short version in 30 seconds if you're in the middle of like a conversation, then you just need to come back to yourself. So the 3-minute breathing space. Now, when I taught mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, this was the practice that seemed to me to change things for the most people. The people who did this practice, and there were lots of practices, but people who did this one seemed to develop a completely different relationship to what was going on in their lives. And it was very empowering. I remember this one guy, he was a trial lawyer, a defense lawyer, like a public defender in Brooklyn, New York. And I don't know if you have any sense of that, but lots of immigrants who don't speak English and who have no money and who are struggling, and then a strong, large population of people in poverty, etc. So these were the people he was representing. And as you can imagine, this is very stressful to try and be an advocate for people who are in a system that's kind of hard on them, or very, very hard on them, and they don't even necessarily speak English. It was a very stressful job, and the kind of job where if you fail, someone who does not deserve to be punished will be punished. It's a very high stress job. So he began doing the 3-minute breathing space um, as a result of part of the training that says, look at these moments in your day that you can reclaim, moments that are currently stressful that you could reclaim by bringing mindfulness to them. And there was this moment when he had to go sit in the court. And the reason he had to go sit there is because his case was about to be called and he couldn't leave, but he also couldn't get any work done. And so it was like this limbo, like one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake feeling of like, oh, I've got so much to do and I can't work, but I can't leave. So he began to use the 3-minute breathing space in that moment. And he found, and he came and reported to us, so the very first week he did this, that by the time the judge called his case, rather than being full of anxiety and full of like frustration and full of and cluttered thinking, he was clear, he was present, he felt good. He felt good in his body, he felt settled, and he was much more on point and able to do his job well. So as you can imagine, that was a pretty good endorsement for other people to try it. So this is my suggestion to you of to give this a try. All right. So that's that. I will put the link to the page. And okay. And then the third thing is really two things, but I'll do them in two pieces. The third thing is maybe doing a longer practice, a longer sitting practice. Now, some people find these really hard. And so in order to help transition you into a longer practice, I created a series of meditations. Honestly, I made 21. No one's ever made it past 3. So just do 3. It's fine. 21 are all on the page. Just do one. The first meditation in this is designed to help you stay longer and to notice that the thinking mind pulls you away and to come back. That's all it's for, to notice the thinking mind pulls you away and come back. And it's very nice. I put little birds and like water in the background, so it's kind of soothing. And it's really nice. Most of the people, everyone who's told me about it has enjoyed it. If you don't like it, you're welcome to tell me that too, but no one has. And it is kind of like a little doorway into a longer practice that's a little easier. And so again, the link below. And then finally, the last thing is if you have a longer practice that you like, or you just want to experiment, then I strongly encourage you to do that too. The longer practices are like the heavier weightlifting or the longer exercise class. They do more. It's true. Okay. They literally do more. And so, but I want to be very clear. If you only do 3 mindful breaths, if you only do that and you do it repeatedly in the day, maybe 4 times a day or 10 times a day, because it feels good. It's like having a sip of coffee, right? How often do I have a sip of coffee? All the time, all day long. I love coffee. Coffee's my jam. Like that, let the 3 mindful breaths be like, if you only do that and don't do anything else, it will benefit you. You'll see the benefit. And I invite you to comment wherever this is and write. Okay. So, anything else? I think that's it. Mindfulness meditation builds the parts of the brain that physically change how your brain functions with stress. You build yourself an island to come back to. When you're standing on that island, you can regroup, you can navigate life better. You build this island by doing practices, and I'm offering 4 steps into it: 3 mindful breaths, 3-minute breathing space, my little one meditation, the first meditation of the 21, and anything else that you enjoy or want to do. And there's a gazillion meditation apps out there, or YouTube videos, or find something you like and do it. All right. But if you don't want to do that, don't. Just stick with my 3. Okay. Let me know how it's going. Report back. Comment here. Join the Blissipline group. Comment there. All right. I'm going to make this widely available. I did it for the Continuum group, but I'm going to share it further. All right. May you find ways to be happier and more empowered in relationship to life.